Alright, so I just finished playing Silent Hill F, and to be honest with you, I actually really enjoyed this game. Now, it's not a perfect game by any means, but I did quite enjoy myself. It was a fun game. I actually quite enjoyed myself playing this game. Now, this game wasn't actually developed by Konami, it was given to another company to develop, and they did a very good job, to be honest with you, with this game. But I think it was only published by Konami, so I'm not sure how much hand they had in it. But yeah, the developers behind this game, they did a very good job. And not only that, it's actually been over a decade now since we actually got a mainline Silent Hill game. Because if you guys have been following the series, is that this is just my opinion now, but I think after Silent Hill 3, after that, the series kind of started falling apart and it got boring in a way. But after this, after the last game, which was like over a decade ago, like this, they came back strong with this game. Like this game was actually fun to play and it was creepy. So yeah, I quite enjoyed myself playing this game. So I can actually say with confidence, Silent Hill is back. And with all that being said, let's finally get into the review. So in this game, you're following a girl named Hiniko as you're going through this town that's now infested with, creatures that are trying to kill her, and she doesn't really know what's going on. So this is a psychological horror, and the developers actually did a very good job building this game, especially like the narrative of this game, because as you're playing this game, you don't know what's going on, which actually adds another layer of creepiness in this game, because it's not like Resident Evil where the monsters are in your face. This is more like you don't know what's going on, and now these creatures are attacking you. They're coming out of nowhere, and you don't know what's really going on. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So it's a psychological horror, as all Silent Hill games are. Now, I'm not going to get into any spoilers or anything like that because I don't want to spoil it for people. But this is what I want to say about the story in this game. If you're picking this game up and you're playing this game for the first time, do not look at any spoilers at all, because this game is best played blind. Because the way, as I mentioned, the way the story is written, getting into this game, like the way the game is played, is that you're not supposed to know anything going through this game, because that's what adds also to the horror as well. Because you don't know what's going on, how does all these events, how they all tie together. But as you get to the end, like I will probably say that like the last I'll say about 20-ish%, you start figuring out, oh, this it connects to this, that connects to all that, now that makes sense. You start figuring out what's actually going on. And like I mentioned, it is a psychological horror. So it is best to play this game completely blind and do not look at any spoilers at all. You will enjoy this game a lot more if you don't know anything, because that's the way this game is actually made. And I'll give you guys some advice. Make sure when the journal updates, make sure you read the journal, because it does add another layer to the story. Because I think if you don't read the journal at all, you might get a bit confused. But yeah, definitely read the journal when the journey entry says updated. So make sure you're reading the journal as you're playing this game. That's my advice to you. And also, it does add to Hiniko's story, like how she's connected to all of this and what's going on with her as a character. It's all connected, so make sure you are reading the journal entries as well. And that's all I'll say about the story, because otherwise I have to get into spoilers, because to be honest with you, the story is well written, to be honest with you. Like, I really did enjoy the story as well. And the story is part of the horror itself, so yeah, I think most people will enjoy the story as well, but the way it's told, maybe some people won't like it, the way it's told, like the narrative of it. But yeah, me personally, I actually did enjoy the story. So when it comes to the horror, like this game is actually creepy, because also this game does add a little bit, like Japanese mythology as well, and how it's because that kind of all does connect. And you know how in Silent Hill games, how you got the kind of like the normal-ish world where you got the fog and stuff like that. You're going through and you're fighting a couple of monsters, and then you have the other side of the like the other side of the coin where it's like a dark world, and it's all we're fighting more dangerous monsters, and you're fighting the bosses and stuff like that. And the enemy designs are actually pretty good, I reckon, in my opinion. They did like the enemy designs. Well, the monsters themselves are not exactly scary. They're more like disgusting in a sense, more like grotesque in a sense. And also, like I mentioned, if you are reading Hiniko's journal, like what she views of them, there's more grotesques in a way. So that's the way the enemies are designed, the more grotesque rather than scary. And also, as you're traversing the world, like you don't know what you're coming up against. Like you don't know what's around the corner where you're gonna fight, what you're gonna fight against next. Now, there isn't any jump scares or anything like that, because I did mention that this is more like a psychological horror. So you don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know exactly what's going on and how these monsters are connected to the events happening. So so it's got that psychological horror. If you play this type of Japanese games, you know what I'm talking about. Because this game is not like Resident Evil where the monster's in your face, it's threatening, it's aggressive and trying to kill you. This is more of a psychological horror. It's because it's more of a, with the story, with the elements of the story, like you don't know what's really going on, you don't know what you're up against, and the way the monsters are designed, like what they're doing in this world and why they're there. There's a that type of psychological horror. You know how psychological horrors get. It's more about the psychological aspect rather than the monster being aggressive and up in your face. If guys know what I'm talking about. And another thing that does add to the psychological horror as well is that as you're traversing these two worlds, like the dark world and the normal world in a sense, as you're traversing these two worlds, like you have to also inventory manage because you're not sure like exactly what to pick and what you should be picking up. Well, it's not exactly hard to inventory manage, but you do have to have it in mind in a sense, like what you're picking up and what you're going to do with this item. Because also is that when you get to the save points, because it's like a shrine, you can use those save points to actually exchange items, not all items, but some items for prep points. And you can use that prep points for either to increase your stats or to get an item that gives you like an extra boost or on something. But yeah, there is all that as well. But like I said, it's not hard to inventory manage either. But yeah, you have to make sure like are you picking up the right thing? If you're trying to pick up everything, you have to run back to the save points sometimes. And it's not, like I said, it's not hard to inventory manage, but it's also like it makes you think as well. Like what you're going to be dealing with, what do you really need with you as well, especially if you are playing on higher difficulties. If you're playing it on normal difficulty, which is basically story, you won't have a difficult time like inventory manage. But if you start playing it on harder difficulty settings, like you will struggle with that because you need like what items should I take? Should I take more health items? Should I take more sanity items? Stuff like that. So there is that aspect as well. So you need to use your brain as well. Also the puzzles in this game, as you're traversing the world, if you played Silent Hill games before, there are puzzles as well. So I will say this about the puzzles. The puzzles are not exactly hard. Well, I think there's only like, I think 2 or 3 where I was really stuck at, where they really got me stuck. But you can figure them out. It's not something that's impossible. They're not impossible to solve, but they're not exactly too easy either. They're just challenging. You do have to think about it a little bit. So there is that. Well, at least that's how it was for me. Yeah, so the puzzles are not too bad. They're challenging, but not impossible to solve, but not too easy either. So the puzzles were pretty good in my opinion. Now, when it comes to the combat most of the time is pretty good, but there are times where it gets kind of clunky. So when it comes to combat, basically, like, you gotta time your attacks right. You gotta dodge at the right time, especially, when you're doing a heavy attack, you gotta make sure you time it properly so you can actually hit the enemy. So it is kind of like a slow combat kind of style, but it's not perfect either because the thing is that when you're at the beginning, the early parts of the game, when you're fighting like one enemy or sometimes 2 enemies, and the bosses as well count with this, is that the combat most of the time works there because you got to dodge, like I said, you got to dodge them at the right time, you can attack them at the right time. And if you're smart, you could kind of hit both of them, depending on what weapon you're using. But when the thing is that when you start getting later parts of the game, when you're fighting multiple enemies, like so basically more than 3, is that the combat can get very clunky and very like, how do I say it, not designed for multiple enemies. Because when you're fighting multiple enemies, you will get hit a lot, and it's how do I say that? It can make combat kind of annoying as well. That's the negative part of this game, I reckon, is a little bit of the combat because, like I said, it's not really designed for multiple enemies at once, if that makes sense. Because like the way the combat is designed, it's more for 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 when you're fighting 2 enemies and the bosses, of course. But that's what I think about the combat. Now, the weapon durability was not too bad either because I wasn't like the weapons weren't breaking easily. Like when as I was fighting, I didn't find them that they were breaking easy. And also, you do get a tool repair kit as you're playing the game, so you can repair your weapons. You just got to make sure they don't break all the way. So that wasn't too bad. But yeah, when it comes to fighting multiple enemies, yeah, that part of the game was not very good because there are some enemies, especially later on in the game, where the one that crawls on the floor. If you guys played the game, you know which enemy I'm talking about. The one that crawls on the floor kind of does that when he grabs it, kind of does that leaking animation. that enemy, when you're fighting that enemy with other enemies on top, that enemy is so annoying because that thing dodges your attacks as well. So sometimes you have to actually chase this enemy, and he hits you, and he gets like 3 hits in. If you guys know what I mean, so it's kind of clunky in that way. Now the combat is not hard to. It's not a hard combat system. Like, because here's the thing, right? I'm getting kind of sick of like or like everybody comparing every top like this type of style of gameplay. I'm getting sick of people comparing this type of games to Dark Souls, this type of combat system, because Dark Souls is not the first game that did this, but I don't know why everybody compares every style of combat like this to Dark Souls. I don't know why people are doing that, but yeah, I've got no idea. But even with this thing, this does not compare to Dark Souls at all, because Dark Souls, though, that Dark Souls is a very hard in combat because you gotta really time your attacks in that one. This one is way more forgiving than that because the combat itself is not. Even though you gotta time your attacks to make sure your attacks hit, they're not hard to time, if you know what I mean. It's not a hard combat system either. So you just gotta dodge at the right time when an enemy attacks, but it does give you fair warning before they attack anyway. So that's the thing as well. So I want to compare this to Dark Souls at all. So it is the combat system is easier than that, but that's what I think about the combat system. So the combat system is not too bad. It's pretty good most of the time, but there are times, like I said, when you're fighting multiple enemies where it gets kind of very clunky, but that's all. But most of the time I did enjoy myself even with the combat. Now, there is another thing that could be a negative as well. Not for me, because I did enjoy this game, and I think most people will enjoy this game, so I don't think that's that much of a negative, but it could be a negative because, now I gotta say this as fake as possible because I don't want to spoil it for people, but once you beat this game and get the ending, because there's only one ending when you play the first playthrough, you're locked to one ending, but then it encourages you to play New Game Plus to get all the other endings, right? That's the way it works. Now, I won't say why because I have to get into spoilers, but that's the way the game is structured. I want to say it's like Nier Automata, not to that level, but you do have to play the game again, probably even multiple times to get the other endings. But the problem is that if people, the type of people that don't really like this type of games, but they like it enough to play the whole thing, they might not play the second run to where they get the full narrative of this game. So they might miss out on that. Because once they do their first playthrough, they might say, all right, that's it, I'm done with the game. But they will be missing out on the on the New Game Plus side with all the extra, the extra narrative that it has, the overall narrative of the story. They might not understand, they might not get that. But I would say that's probably the negative because, like I said, some people won't do that. So that could be a negative. Like I said, not for me because I did actually have fun with this game, and I do think most people will have fun with this game. So I think most people will play New Game Plus after they beat their first run. I think most people do, especially with the narrative of the story and the way it's structured. I think it's got a lot of replay value anyway. So I think most people will, but there are people that won't, that's why I'm saying it could be a negative. Now, another thing I want to mention is that there is another thing where players are having some problems when they're playing on the PlayStation 5 Pro. They're getting like these like noise effects and some stuttering here and there because apparently they're saying that on a base PS5 they're getting better performance. Now, I did play on the PS5 Pro, and me personally, I didn't have any problems playing on the PS5 Pro. The only noise I got with the plants was right at the beginning of the game when when you first get control of a Hinika and you're walking down and you're like when you do the right turn, you're walking down that path. There you can actually see a little bit of noise on the plants, but that's the only time I got it. Everything else, the game was smooth for me. I didn't get any stuttering. I didn't get any visual glitches or anything like that. So yeah, that's how it was for me. So I'm not sure as to why that's happening to some players, but yeah, for me, I had a perfect game. For me, it was perfect. Yeah, so I'm not sure what's happening with that, but I didn't have any much problem with that, except like I said right at the beginning of the game when I had the noise on some of the plants, but that's about it. But hopefully, they come out with a patch soon to fix all those problems because this is actually a good game. I did enjoy myself. So, do I recommend it? Yes. If you like psychological horrors and you like, the Japanese type of horrors, like these type of horror games, and if you are a fan of Silent Hill, or even like me, where you think after the third game it kind of fell apart, you will enjoy this game. I do highly recommend you play this game if you're into all of that. I do highly recommend. I actually had fun. I did quite enjoy myself with this game, so it was enjoyable, and yeah, I had fun playing this game. So anyway. And actually, you know what? I actually hear that this game is actually selling pretty well now. So yeah, so we're definitely going to get more Silent Hill after this. And yes, I have heard that they are remaking Silent Hill 1, which, in my opinion, that's the best in the series. The best one is the first game. I'll probably say, for me, I'll probably say, or like, here's the thing: I didn't actually play Silent Hill 2 remake yet, but if I have to compare it with all the Silent Hill except for that, the Silent Hill F is actually quite up. You know, I would probably even say I like it. I like it. Maybe the second best, to be honest with you. But that's just my opinion, right? Some people might disagree with that, but yeah, I guess it is what it is. But yeah, I did quite enjoy myself. So anyway, that's enough from me. Like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. And yeah, thank you for watching.